All right, so this part is a review, and that's going to help us with what we're about to do. Okay, so I want you to solve this by completing the square. Okay? Solve by completing the square. Now remember, the whole purpose of solving by completing the square is so you can have a binomial squared, so you end up with the idea of the square root property, right? Right? Okay. So if I want to complete the square, if I want to solve this by completing the square, what must I do first? Okay. So I get x squared plus 6x equal -1. Notice I left some space. All right, now the idea is that you want to rewrite this side so that way you get a binomial squared. Remember that? So you want something that's a binomial raised to the second power. So to do that, we completed the square on the variable x. So we completed the square on this side. So how do I complete the square on the x's? What did I do? I take, first of all, you got to make sure this x squared is 1, right? It is. So I take half of the coefficient of x. What's the coefficient of x here? 6. I take half of it, and once I do that, what do I do to this? Squared. So I get 3 squared, which is 9. So I add 9 to both sides. Right? So then the left-hand side, this x squared plus 6x plus 9, remember that's called what kind of trinomial? Perfect squared, because you can always factor it as a binomial times itself. What is that binomial? X plus 3 squared equal, and this is going to be what, 8? All right? Now, that's the idea we're going to use in a little while, but let's just go ahead and finish this. So if I want to solve for x, what do I do next? Take the square root of both sides, plus and minus, right? And so I get x plus 3 equal plus or minus, and let's simplify the square root of 8. Square root of 8 is 4 times 2, square root of 4 times 2, so that's 2 square root of 2. And then one more step when you're done, just subtract 3 from both sides, and so what's x?
3 plus or minus.
-3 plus or minus 2 square root of 2. Okay? All right. Now, let's go back to circles. So we, at this point, all in terms of the equation of a circle, the equation of a circle, if you go back through all of your problems we've done, has been written in standard form. So at this point, all of the equations were in standard form. We're in standard form. Meaning x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equal r squared. Okay? When it's in that form, then it's very easy to determine the center and the radius. But they're not always in standard form. What makes this the equation of a circle, listen carefully to this, what makes this the equation of a circle is the fact that if you were to FOIL this out, don't do it, but if you were to FOIL this out, you would get an x times an x, which is a what? X squared. You would also get a y times a y, which is a what? Y squared. So what makes this the equation of a circle is that x squared and y squared. That's what makes this equation of a circle. The x squared and the what? Y squared. You could have an equation that looks like this. I'm making this up for right now. You could have an equation that looks like this. X squared plus y squared minus 4x plus 6y minus 2 equals 0. Is that the equation of a circle?
squared and y squared.
It has an x squared and y squared, so is that an equation of a circle? Yes, that is the equation of a circle. That equation there, can you tell me what the center and the radius is? Yes or no? Well, can you look at this and tell me what the center and the radius is?
0.
No. I wanted you to say no. You had to say no.
No.
Even if there
Because-
was a way, we don't know.
Because it's not in standard form. You're supposed to say, well, it was in standard form, then I could determine the center and the radius right away, right? But is that in standard form? No, that's not in standard form. So somehow we need to get this in standard form. Now, this is called general form, by the way. So when it's written like this is called general form of the equation of a circle. So this is called the general form. So the general form, we'll write in the next page. The general form of the equation of a circle okay, looks like this. X squared plus y squared. So the coefficient of x squared and y squared have to be 1s. So x squared plus y squared plus bx plus cy plus d equals 0. So x squared plus y squared plus bx plus cy plus d equals 0. That's what the general form of the equation of a circle looks like. In other words, you have an x squared and you have an x. You have a y squared and you have a what? A y, and you have a constant. A constant here being what letter? D. Okay, now listen to this. I could easily determine the equation of a, I could easily determine the center and the radius if the equation was written in what form? Standard form. Standard form is where you had this. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equal r squared. That was standard form. Somehow, I need to get this right here, this general form into this. All right, so I'm going to ask you this question. What idea are you going to use to get that x squared plus y squared minus 4x plus 6y minus 2 equals 0 to look like standard form? Huh? Completing the square. Completing the square. Why do you think I went over it a while ago? I didn't even use it. I went over that example, solving the quadratic equation of completing the square, so that way you can remember about it. So when you complete the square, don't you end up with a binomial square? Isn't this right here a binomial square? Isn't that a binomial square? So when it's in general form, to get it to standard form, you're going to complete the square. All right, you're going to complete the square. All right, so let's do that. Okay, so listen carefully. If I go back to that equation that we just did, and I complete the square, I brought the constant to the other side, right? Okay? So in this case, what do you think I'm going to have to do? Bring the constant to the other side. Okay? So far we're on track. Then once I brought the constant to the other side, then I put the x's together. The x's were together, right? And I completed the square on the x's. But the problem here is that it's not just x's that I see, but what else do I see? The y's. So not only do I complete the square on the x's, I complete the square on the what? The y's. Because when you complete the square, you write it as a binomial squared. So how many binomial squares do you see here? 2. So you can complete the square on the x's, and you can complete the square on the y's. All right, so here we go. All right, so what you're going to do is this. You're going to put the x's together, you're going to put the y's together, and you're going to put the constant on the other side. All right. Now remember when we solved this quadratic equation, when I brought the 1 over, I said leave some space, because when you complete the square, you're going to have to add a number to both sides, right? Okay. Same idea here. So listen carefully. So you can put the x's together. So I'm going to say x squared. What else do I write? Minus 4x. Leave some space. Then put the y's together. You're going to say plus what? Y squared plus 6y. Leave some space. Equal what? 2. All right, so that's where we're at. X squared minus 4x. Now I have to add something to that to get a perfect square trinomial. A perfect square trinomial. Do the same thing with the y's. All right? The rest, you've practiced on this. No fractions involved here. So there shouldn't be any what's the hyperventilation, whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Hyperventilation and anxiety.
No fractions. All right. So when I complete the square on the x's, I take half of x. What's half of x? So the coefficient of x is negative 4, right? When I take half of negative 4 and I square it, I get negative 2 squared, correct? Which is what? 4. So I add 4 to what? Both sides. Just like you did when solving the quadratic equation by completing the square. I complete the square on the y's as well. What's the coefficient of y?
6.
What do I do to that 6? What do I do to 6 divided by 2? I square it. So that's 3 squared, which is 9. So I add 9 to both sides. So that's where I'm at. One more step, about another 5 seconds, and you're done. This trinomial should now be a perfect square trinomial. So how do you factor that?
Square root.
No, dude.
X minus 2.
X minus 2 squared.
Oh,
Okay? Plus this should now be a perfect square trinomial. How do you factor that? I don't see an x, I see a y. Y plus 3 squared. Equal, and what's those 3 things add together? 15? Now you can tell me the center of this circle. What's the center? No, no, no. 2, negative 3. Girl. 2, negative 3. What's the radius? Square root of 15. Square root of 15. Because remember, r squared is 15, right? So if r squared is 15, how do you get r by itself? We did that the other day. You take the square root of both sides. Remember, we also discussed, well, why don't I use a plus or minus? Because the radius measures distance. Distance is always what kind of number? Positive. So it's just a positive square root of 15. You're done. That's your answer. All right, let's do another one. Let's do another one. So you do have one in your test, okay? You do have one in your test.
Can you just give us all these formulas or no?
Yeah, but there's no formula for completing the square.
No, but I mean like.
Yeah, the distance formula, all that, yes. Yeah. No, there are steps. There's no formula. I'm not giving you steps. Okay? I'm not giving you steps.
That would be nice.
All right, number 2. Determine the center and radius. Determine the center and radius of the following circle. All right. X squared plus y squared plus 6x minus 2y plus 5 equals 0. There's no way you can look at that and tell me what the center radius is unless you're looking at somebody who already has it done. All right, so I've got to complete the square. So I've got to put the x's together, I've got to put the y's together, and I got to bring the constant to the other side. So tell me what to write. X squared plus 6x plus some space plus what else? Y squared minus 2y plus some space equal what? Negative 5, right? Negative 5. All right, so what do you think I'm going to add to the, what do you think I'm going to put in that first blank to make this a perfect square trinomial? 9. So you take the coefficient of 6, which is, coefficient of x, the coefficient of x, which is 6, divide by 2, and square it. So 3 squared is 9. So I add 9 to both sides, because what you do to one side, you do to the other. So I add 9 to both sides. What do I need to add in that second blank to get that to be a perfect square trinomial? 1. I take the coefficient of y, which is negative 2. I take half of it, and I square it. So that's negative 1 squared, which is 1. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Okay? So now this trinomial here is now a perfect square trinomial. How do you factor that? X plus 3 squared. The next one is going to be plus what? Y minus 1 squared. Equal 5? Okay, equal 5. So now what's the center?
Negative 3, positive 1.
1. And the radius?
Square root of 5.
Square root of 5. Okay? And that's all this is. That's all this is.
It actually got easier as you get to
All right, let's do one more just to see what you can do with this one. Suppose this time that the equation's this. X squared plus y squared minus 6y.
That first word is an X.
Yes. Plus 1 equals 0. All right, so x squared plus y squared minus 6y plus 1 equals 0. You have enough information from what we did yesterday to get through this. So you might say, well, where's the x term? Well, it's just not there. Okay, it's not there. But you have enough information of what we did yesterday to be able to do this. So listen carefully. So you're going to put all the x's together, all the y's together, constant on the other side, right? But there's only one term with an x in it. What is it? X squared. All right? So I'm not going to do, listen carefully what I'm saying. I'm not going to complete the square on that at all. Because there's no x term. There's no x term. Okay? Now listen carefully what we're about to do. But I am going to complete the square on the y's because there is a y term. Leave some space. Equal a what?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. Now you may say, well, why did you say you're not going to complete the square on the x squared?
You don't have the other x.
Remember, when you complete the square, you're trying to make that a binomial squared, right?
You don't have enough to make it.
But x squared, based on what we did yesterday, your x squared, you already know how to write x squared as a binomial squared. What is it?
X times x.
X minus 0.
Okay.
X minus 0. There's nothing you need to do there. There's no completeness square because x squared is x minus 0 squared. X squared is a binomial squared. It's x minus 0. Now, we got to do the y's though. So I take half of negative 6, which is negative 3, and I square it. So what do I add to both sides? 9. All right. So now this is a perfect square trinomial. So it'll be y what? Minus 3 squared equal 8. So what's the center? 0, 3. The radius is the square root of 8, right?
Right.
But I need you to simplify that. So that's 4 times 2?
Yeah, 2 square root of 4.
2 square root of 2? So you understand that when one of the x or the y terms is missed, then there's no completeness squared, because you can always write x squared as x minus 0 squared. Or if it's just y squared, you'd say y minus 0 squared. Okay? You're going to see one like that in my math lab. I think the one in your in-class worksheet in a little while has all 4 terms. But on my math lab, there is one that looks like this. So just know what to do.
What about the one on test?
Okay? Just know what to do. All right, so let me give you that worksheet, the in-class worksheet.